Earlier, we discussed elections in Hungary and Bulgaria, and now it's time to talk about the local elections in Britain.
The easiest answer is that the results express very strongly the views and the opinions of the people of Britain, who are totally dissatisfied with their government at the present moment.
We witnessed what some described as Putin's public humiliation after President Zelensky signed a decree effectively allowing the parade to go ahead in Moscow. What exactly happened?
There are three parts to this story, and they're all brilliant. All brilliant for Ukraine, that is, not so much for Putin or Russia.
And as for parades, what is the difference between the European approach to commemorating victory over Nazism and the Russian approach?
It isn't a show of how mighty we are, how strong we are, how great we are, and how successful we are. It's a case of respect for the dead and the fallen.
Welcome to Russia Unmasked, the podcast where we discuss geopolitical developments in Europe and expose Russia's attempts to influence them. My name is Andriy Bohdanovich, and I'm a journalist, and I'm very grateful for your comments, likes, and support for our channel. Today's guest is Mr. Tony Meehan, Fellow of the Royal Society of Arts and a specialist in PR, media relations, and crisis management with 50 years of experience. Hello, Tony.
Good morning. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
Okay, today I have maybe five themes, and many questions. And our first question concerns elections. Earlier, we discussed elections in Hungary and Bulgaria, and now it's time to talk about the local elections in Britain. What are the results, and is there any sign of Russian influence in the electoral process?
The easiest answer is that the results express very strongly the views and the opinions of the people of Britain, who are totally dissatisfied with their government at the present moment. As for the Russian influence, I doubt if there was any Russian influence, because if it was, it would have been for the government and probably the Green Party, but it wasn't that successful. Let me explain a little bit about the local politics here. These were predominantly for regional and local authorities, except in Scotland and in Wales, where they were for the national parliaments in those areas. What we have is that a total dissatisfaction with the government on its performance and treatment of illegal immigration, political threats from Islam activists, two-tier policing, spending money it doesn't have, spending it on things that are of no interest to the British public, and basically total dissatisfaction. To say they're incompetent is being kind to them. The Prime Minister is a lawyer and therefore leads by the law, as opposed to actually political instinct and political feeling and understanding. So he has no emotional relationship with his constituents. We've got another 3 years, basically, of the same government. Whether the Prime Minister remains that long or not, I would be surprised. I think if he lasts for Christmas, he'll be lucky.
Can this election influence on relationship with Ukraine?
Not really, because it's basically it's the relationship with Ukraine is common across, I think, all political parties in Britain, and that is that there is a strong support and both emotional as well as military and also economic for Ukraine, to ensure that Ukraine is no longer a case of ensuring that Ukraine survives. Is most certainly now more a case of the Ukraine succeeds and therefore defeats its enemy in an honorable way.
Okay. Next question about May parade in Moscow. We are used to seeing large-scale and highly theatrical Russian military parades. This time, however, it felt rather different. Moreover, we witnessed what some described as Putin's public humiliation after President Zelensky signed a decree effectively allowing the parade to go ahead in Moscow. What exactly happened?
There are three parts to this story, and they're all brilliant for Ukraine, that is, not so much for Putin or Russia. Before the parade, there was a lot of political shenanigans and maneuvering, whereby Putin, Russia presented Ukraine as a potential threat to the parade, and therefore Ukraine would cast as the villain that would actually destroy the parade. And in a single masterstroke, a single brilliant maneuver, President Zelensky issued his decree saying, well, he did two things. First of all, he issued a statement saying there was a ceasefire. And it's interesting to note that Russia totally ignored the ceasefire. But he then proceeded to issue a decree to basically say, you have my permission to proceed with your Victory Day parade. We won't touch you. And it then became obvious that Putin had two problems. He was concerned that Ukraine might use the Victory Day parade to attack Moscow, which it's capable of doing. But secondly, it became obvious more now than ever before that Putin is under pressure of potential assassination from within Russia, and apparently there are a number of groups who are in the process. There was one previous attempt which failed, but apparently there are a number of groups who are there in Moscow, former colleagues, former close allies, and supporters of Putin who want rid of him. So therefore, I think in what can be described as a brilliant political maneuver, and also he gained greater respect. I mean, I'm not quite sure how many of our viewers will be familiar with what happened, but that is President Zelensky, not only issued a ceasefire decree, he also cooperated the support of President Trump, whereby Trump announced a ceasefire, therefore allowing him to take credit for it. Putin then issued his truce, which he failed to keep, but he therefore his political President Zelensky's political status, both in Europe and I think around the world, of those who are interested, most certainly improved tremendously. I thought it was a genius masterstroke.
Mm-hmm. And as for parades, what is the difference between the European approach to commemorating victory over Nazism and the Russian approach? And more broadly, what purpose do such military parades serve?
Right. If we take the Russian approach is to tell everybody in Russia how wonderful and how brilliant and how successful Russia is in war. And therefore, it goes back 80 years to celebrate this against Nazi Germany. With regards to the rest of the countries in Europe, America, and so on and so forth, they have a different approach, and that is that they honor and pay respect to their fallen, to both the military and civilian dead. If we take the UK, Britain, as an example, the 11th hour on the 11th day of the 11th month every year, there is a 2-minute silence. No parades, no shenanigans, no bands, no nothing, whatever. It's just very discreet respect. And other countries have similar moments in their diary. The significance of the 11th day of the 11th month relates to World War One. So we're going back 100 years, and they've been doing this here in the UK for more than 100 years. So it doesn't. It isn't a show of how mighty we are, how strong we are, how great we are, and how successful we are. It's a case of respect for the dead and the fallen.
Mm-hmm. Last week, I found some interesting articles in European press. They published an article by Timothy Garton-Ash about Germany's growing military role after the Second World War. As early as next year, Germany's defense spending is expected to equal the combined defense budgets of France and the United Kingdom, and by 2030, it is projected to be larger. The declared goal of the German government is to build the strongest conventional army in Europe. And the question, especially on this symbolic anniversary, is the following. How can we ensure that the growth of German military power this time becomes a positive development for all of Europe?
I recognize your concern, and I will do my best to calm you and keep things into perspective. If we go back 10 years, when President Trump first became the American president, he one of his biggest complaints was that Europe and European countries, NATO and EU, were not pulling their weight, were not paying their way, and that America was subsidizing the defense of Europe, and it was X thousand miles away. What we've seen recently is a repeat of that because President Trump has put embargoes and other sanctions on Europe and NATO countries, and also threatening to withdraw from NATO. Now, if America withdraws from NATO, then that leaves an exposure. And basically, what not only Chancellor Merz, but also President Macron and other leaders in Europe have increased, and I have to admit here, with the exception of Britain, they have increased their defense spending. So therefore they can, whether or not they pick up the shortfall of America, that's unlikely, but most certainly that they're demonstrating to a number of different audiences, most certainly to America, to President Trump, saying, okay, we hear you, we listen to you, we are going to increase, we have increased our defense budgets. Being in Europe, you know, and you know better than all that Russia is the major threat. You're suffering that at the present moment. You're experiencing it at the present moment. What Europe, Merz, Macron, and others are saying to Russia: your economy is in a terrible state. Your military is being massacred right, left, and center by a single state, Ukraine. You're losing more people on the battlefield than you can recruit in a year. So therefore, we are increasing our defense structure, not merely the defense spending, is actually what they're doing with it. So therefore, don't think about invading us. Don't think about attacking us, or for that matter, a member of NATO. Now, this is President Putin, insofar as Hungary is concerned, lost his contact within NATO. He's still got one or two others inside the tent that will give him the information that he requires, but his influence of blocking things has been, let's say, reduced. So therefore, I think it's more of an expression of defense against Russia as opposed to the potential of recreating an historic German blitzkrieg-style army. I think it's for the benefit of Europe. And I think also that Merz, amongst all the European leaders, is totally European.
And the relationships between US and Europe. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio's visit to Europe comes on the heels of Trump's criticisms of the Pope and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, as well as the renewed talk of withdrawing American troops from Germany. How should this visit be interpreted? Is Washington trying to contain diplomatic fallout, and is Rubio being sent in as administration's chief troubleshooter?
I think peacemaker as opposed to troubleshooter. Rubio, as the Secretary of State, has the responsibility to foreign relations. If you think about the 6.4 billion, or 1.4 billion, I should say, Catholics in the world, it doesn't do Trump any good to upset the leader of that particular religious group. Equally, there are 70 million Catholics in America, many of whom would have voted for Trump, who are probably now thinking what they're going to do in the future. Rubio's a natural choice, not only because of his position at the state, but also because he is a Catholic. So therefore, he's like-minded with Leo. One of the thoughts occurred to me when I was looking at your questions was that I just wonder whether or not Trump's reaction to the Pope is a little bit of jealousy on the basis that the Pope is American, Trump is American, the Pope has got, albeit a different level of influence, but most certainly he has greater influence over a worldwide audience as opposed to simply an American audience that Trump has. And I just wondered whether that's part of the reason for Trump rejecting and being aggressive towards him. But I agree with your thinking that I think Rubio is there to actually placate matters, calm things down, give reassurance to Pope Leo that you know, things mainly in America are calm and to the best of his ability forgive and ignore the Trump outbursts.
Is it really important that Rubio is Catholic? Because of the question between Trump and the Pope were more political, but not religious.
Yeah, but it's an empathy as opposed to anything. Rubio, I expect. I mean, it's one of those meetings that you wish you were the fly on the wall. You were there. You were able to listen to it. I think it's beneficial. Nothing more than that he's Catholic, because there will be a mutual respect between them, and therefore they will have a dialogue that an ordinary politician would not be able to have.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Meehan, for your answers, and
My pleasure, sir.
Thank you, dear viewers, for your comments and likes. And remember, Russia must be unmasked. And please subscribe to our channel. My name is Andriy Bohdanovich, and I'll see you again next week. Thank you and bye.
Andriy, thank you very much.